Everybody is dealing with something. And that's really why I want to share these stories, because the more stories we tell, the more people can relate to them, and hopefully we can help, get through their own struggle. All right, you guys. So thank you for joining in to another session of Tattoos of My Soul podcast. Today I have Angie Miller. She is a huge part of an amazing place here in Springfield, Ohio called the Safe Harbor House, which is a long-term faith-based residential treatment program for women who suffer from issues such as substance abuse, trauma, trafficking, and domestic abuse. They're either currently dealing with these things or they've dealt with these things in the past. She is a life coach there and also a life skills coordinator. And I'm excited to have you here. You came to our Revive event about a month ago, and we met and talked over the phone. And I just knew right away that you were somebody I wanted to have on the podcast because just of your story and the things that you were sharing. So I thank you for coming and being a part of the podcast today.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
I'm just
absolutely.
excited to talk about God, what he's done, and a little bit about Safe Harbor House too.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we do the podcast, every time I told you I was going to ask you this question. So it's like, we always start out with, what's your favorite quote or a Bible verse or just any kind of words that have really played a big part in your life that maybe have inspired you or kept you going when times have been tough?
Yeah, you definitely gave me fair warning.
Yes.
So I appreciate that. I do. I have two, so I'm going to be an overachiever and pick two.
Yeah.
But one is a quote, and it is Charles Spurgeon, "Consider how precious a soul must be when both God and the devil are after it."
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the story of my life, is that devil just kept trying to take me out just over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
But God was the winner. Yeah. He is the ultimate winner.
Yeah.
And so I cling to that, and it gives me a good perspective on what, the struggle has been about in life.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I've never heard that quote before. That's pretty powerful. I mean, it really talks about the spiritual warfare that goes on in all of our lives, And
no matter how ugly it gets, no matter how dark it gets, God is always there fighting on our behalf.
Absolutely.
For us, and he doesn't give us up. He
just
doesn't.
Exactly.
So.
And what's the other one?
Yeah. So I think it's one you like too, but it's Jeremiah 29:11. And I'm a person in recovery and long-term recovery. And when I first got into recovery, that verse just jumped out at me, and, that he has plans to prosper me and not to harm me, to give me a hope and a future.
Yeah.
And that just, it's what I live my life by, that, he's for me. I used to think he was up there in the clouds ready to shoot lightning out of the sky. It'd take me out for saying or doing the wrong thing. And that's not the God that I found and that I have a relationship with.
Yeah.
So.
I love that. I feel like there's certain verses that you should just know by heart. And that is just one of them. That is, obviously I reference a lot. I have it on my arm, like it's part of me now, but it's just one of those ones that I feel like no matter what people are going through, like if you can give them that, like if you can just remember one verse, that is such a good one to remember, because you literally can encourage anybody in any situation with that word, or with that verse, just knowing that there is always a plan and that there's, a greater good in the works for you. So I love that. So let's talk a little bit about Safe Harbor House, and maybe first just kind of tell me, how did you end up, working there and becoming a part of that place?
Yeah, so I had been a stay-at-home mom for a lot of years, wasn't working, and been doing prison ministry for quite some time. And I met someone who was actually working at Safe Harbor. She had been incarcerated herself, and when she got out, she eventually got connected, started working there, and they were looking for someone. And so I came in, and it's been 5 years. It's been a wonderfully blessed 5 years. It has changed my life. God has used the program of Safe Harbor to heal me in ways I didn't know I needed to be still healed, all while using me to come alongside of women who are still in the struggle, who are still fighting each day, to stay in recovery, to heal from past trauma. So, it's been, I owe kind of a blessing to my friend who got me involved, because she definitely did me a big favor then. She was the connector God used.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So what does your daily work there look like?
Well, with coaching, assigned a couple of different residents. We can have up to 10 residents at a time between the two houses that we have.
Okay.
I currently am coaching 3 residents right now. And so it's individualized. We have a pretty structured program. In each phase of the program, there's 4 phases. They have a lot of boxes they got to get checked and different things that go along with that phase. And so it's just helping them identify goals and setting those goals, finding what we need to do to reach those goals, coming alongside, supporting them, encouraging them when they need it, and celebrating all the victories that come along, because there's a lot of victories. Things that might look like little things to the outsider are huge, for some of our women. So it's a privilege to be there with them. I have never once felt like I went to work when I go there. It's not like I feel like I go to work. It's
That's
a blessing.
when you know you found the right job. Is when it doesn't feel like work. I would agree with you. Like what everything that we're doing, it's like, yes, it's work, but no, not really. It's I agree with that. That's awesome. And like I know it's a faith-based, like the description, faith-based residential treatment program. The majority of the women that come in, do they already have like a faith, based kind of thing in their life going on? Do they have a relationship with God, or do you really see that? I'm sure it's probably a mix of both, but how does that faith increase as they work through this program?
Yeah, I think we are faith-based, but we are a program that anybody can come there. So yes, we have had people who come in who aren't really sure what they think yet. And I think that's the best part of our program, because there are a lot of programs out there that kind of force it. And it should be organic. It should be something that, if the Holy Spirit's involved and if God's doing it, then it's on His time. It's not on our time.
Right.
And I don't know about you, but I've had people try to shove the Bible and God down my throat, and it never, ever worked. In fact, it actually turned me away from for many years. So, we're patient. We let God work that out. We're there to answer questions, to try to be a model of what it looks like to live a life in Christian faith. But nobody has to come there with any certain set of beliefs. So I'd say the majority of them have some belief in the God of the Bible, and maybe they're just not very much depth yet. But it is just a front row seat of miracles happening. I'm telling you, just the things that we get to see in women that are overcoming things that have just kept them held in bondage like for years. I always have this picture of like a beautiful bird who has the ability to fly, and it's in a cage and it can't ever get out of that cage. It's stuck in there. And if you could just open that door and figure out how to unlock that door and let that bird out, it would just fly. And I feel like we see that. We see women who learn, and God partnering with them partnering with God to figure out how to open that lock and to let them get out and to fly.
Yeah, I love that. That's really an amazing analogy. And I think you're spot on. Like you can't ever, I have had that experience where people have forced their beliefs, and that goes across the board. We're not even talking about like faith. I mean, just across the board, you can't force your beliefs or your thinking on really anybody. I think that's so huge when you're trying to encourage somebody, is just encourage them, and then pray for them and let God do the work. Like we're not out to save anybody. And I think a lot of people take on that like responsibility to put that on themselves, or they take on that position like I'm out to save the world. And really that's not our job. We were just there to, we're supposed to be there to encourage people and support people and point them in the right direction. And then ultimately, the rest is up to them and God. So
love them where they're at.
Exactly. Yeah. So you and I love that. I love that analogy. I love that work that you're clearly doing. And I think I would love to hear some more of the, clear examples of some of the things that the women are going through. But I want to hear more about your story, because we talked on the phone. What was that, like 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
And you kind of just shared your story of, your journey of faith, where you've been. Whenever we do a podcast, we kind of talk about what is the time in your life that you've hit rock bottom, that it's like, man, I don't know which way is up, and a time that you have really been rescued by your faith, by God, by, some kind of experience that made you think, I'm not only going to get through this, but I'm going to come out stronger.
Yeah. Well, I'll set the stage for you, give you some background.
Mm-hmm.
But, when I was a child, I remember, at one point, I remember clearly being a happy kid. I wore bib overalls. I chased frogs. I had no cares in the world. I saved every animal I could find. I brought it home. I had a little animal hospital underneath my bed until my parents would find them, and then I'd get in trouble. But I was out to rescue and save every injured baby bird or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then at age 9, I had some sexual trauma that occurred. And it's almost as if just in a moment, like just a split second, my whole world changed.
Yeah.
And I was confused and, ashamed and felt guilty and broken. And I didn't know what to do with any of that. It wasn't someone in my home. I was threatened. I didn't feel like I could tell anybody, so I didn't tell anyone. And it made me turn into rebellious, angry, mouthy, withdrawn, staying to myself, everything that I wasn't before. And I have that memory of that sharp change. And about a year later, the same thing happened again. And so that just kind of piled on. And
same person?
No, it's not same person. Same thing happened. I was molested. It was a person outside my home.
Wow.
And I firmly believe that when we're traumatized, when we have things that we go through, the struggles, the way that we're handling them make us a target at times for predators that are out there. And maybe they can sense that you're already, in a bad place and wounded, and you're an easy target. And so after that, things just they just got worse, and I didn't know how to handle it. I had no coping skills. And so the next several years were, I was just not doing as good in school, and not the kid that my parents had raised. I'm sure I've often wondered what they thought, I was fine and then I wasn't.
Yeah.
And unfortunately they are both passed, and I never told them. They never knew.
Wow.
That's the one regret. If I could give a regret, is that I wish I would have told them. I could have gotten help. They would have had understanding.
Yeah.
But I couldn't bring myself to do it for fear.
Yeah.
So when I was a young teenager, I can't remember how old I was, but I was in trouble. I was grounded for being mouthy, as I usually was. And my grandmother, my dad's mom, came over for the day to visit, and she was mad that I wasn't allowed to come out of my room. And so she came up in my room. I'll never forget. I loved her so much, but it was a really bad choice on her part. And she said, "You shouldn't have to listen to her. She's not your real mom anyways." And so in that moment, I find out that mom that's been raising me, that I think is my mom, is not my biological mother.
Yeah.
And that was shocking.
And that's how you found out, by that
statement. By that statement, yes. And it was shocking, and it was a full-on identity crisis almost immediately. I'm just like, well, what do you mean? And then I was already an angry kid, so now I have a target. So, now I'm angry, and you're not my real mother, and I've been lied to. So it just compounded. It's all piling up and swirling around. And, I know I got sent to juvenile detention for a weekend, maybe the year after, for not coming home when I was supposed to. And I know that was kind of something that got my attention, because I'm definitely a people pleaser by nature, and I never want to be in trouble and on the wrong side of things. But I just got good at sneaking. This is what I did. I thought my strategy is, if I just don't get caught, then I'll be okay.
Okay.
So I did start seeing my biological mother. Unfortunately, that was not a good connection to make. She was not in a healthy place. She wasn't in my life for a reason. She struggled heavily with mental health issues. She had drug issues as well. In fact, she was the first person to give me a drug. So that kind of gave me a coping skill that I had never acquired before, albeit a negative coping skill. It was a coping skill. And I was just confused, just really confused.
Yeah.
So
how old are you at this point?
I'm driving by that point. So I'm thinking 16, 17.
Okay.
From the 16 to 18-year-old mark, I did a lot of sneaking, hiding. I was smoking cigarettes. I was saying I was at work and going to parties. I wasn't afraid to try anything, put myself in a lot of risky positions, I'd say.
Yeah.
And I just... I was just acting out. Things felt chaotic, and they felt out of control inside of me. And I was doing anything that I could just to try to feel better and to try to cope, as best as I could. And When I was 19, I got pregnant when I was 19 with my first child, and that got my attention because what I missed saying was when I was 18 at midnight, when the clock struck, I had my bags packed and I said, I'm going to go live my life my way.
Okay.
And that's where I was at that time. I regret that. I just can't imagine my parents like sitting there not knowing where I was at, what I was doing, how I was, if I was alive.
So you just when
you
turned
left.
18, you left.
Nowhere to go.
Wow.
Nothing. Just
Okay.
left. And I was angry, and I just didn't want to be there anymore. And you can't tell me what to do anymore. I'm going to do this on my own terms.
Mm-hmm.
And that meant I walked away from the church. I'd been in a church that was, I'm going to say slightly legalistic.
Yeah.
There are all different extremes of legalism, but
Mm-hmm.
it was a church where you come in on Sunday, you wear your nice clothes, you sit in a seat, an assigned seat. And if anybody else sits in that seat, you better watch out.
Mm-hmm.
And you wear your nice clothes.
Because God cares where you sit.
Yes. You know that, right?
Yes.
And then, you get your nice clothes on and everything. And then you leave and Monday you're a different person. And I had a lot of damage that was done in the church by kids that were in the youth group that were just really good kids that were all very nice and all that. And when you got to school, were not anymore. And I endured a lot of bullying growing up on top of the being molested. My mother, who again was not my biological mother, she had a lot of weight issues and she was up to 500 pounds. She would be back and forth anywhere between like 400 and 500 pounds. My dad had weight issues, was diabetic, and he would be 350, 400 pounds. And, part of this, so weight has been an issue my whole life. And part of that has been because 1 week we would be on crash diets and there would be no food in the house and we would be measuring our salad dressing and we have to go out to eat and take our own butter and all these things. And then the next week I would come home to Ho-Hos and Twinkies and they would be off their diet. And it was confusing for me. Sure. And so I never knew what I was going to eat. And so I did have food as a coping skill. And it was one of the things that, I can remember kind of sneaking food when I was younger. That was before I had a drug to use.
Well, food can be a drug.
It can be. Absolutely.
It can be a drug. So if you follow Tattoos of My Soul, you are probably interested in increasing and improving your spiritual awareness and health, your emotional health, and even your physical health. I want to tell you guys about something we've got coming that's pretty exciting and that is near and dear to my heart, and that is a guided journal. I went through a really difficult time. My husband and I both did. We were almost shot and killed last year, and we went through a really violent situation. That left us with a lot of emotional baggage. Initially, I started journaling basically just to feel better. I was looking for peace and calm and just something to release how I was feeling. But the more I journaled and the more practices that I put into place, the more I realized that I had a system that I was doing each day that was literally changing my life and changing my whole perspective. This system decreased my anxiety, decreased my depression, and increased my overall joy. It's made such a huge difference for me that I felt it was almost my responsibility to create something that I could share with you guys. So that's exactly what I've done. The life-changing journal, because that's what it did for me, is going to be available soon. So stay tuned, subscribe on tattoosofmysoul.com and join the emailing list, and you'll be the first to know when the guided journal is available. I'm super excited to share this with you guys.
Yeah, so that was part of it, I think, for me is just really important is me looking back at that, just kind of that dysfunction that was going on in the home. And I know that was their struggle and that was the thing that they were battling. It greatly affected me, though. It affected how I viewed food and how I viewed taking care of myself physically. And so lots of different reasons. But yeah, I left and I left the church and I left everyone. And I just went, and the next about 9 months were just, I don't know how I lived through it, to be honest with you. I was at party after party. I was trying anything that was put in front of me.
Where exactly did you go? Did you just kind of camp out at a friend's or just
couch surfing in my car until the car broke down and didn't have that, but I was stubborn. And because I was stubborn, like I wouldn't go, change my mind. It reminds me so much of the story of the prodigal son. You could go home and you could be eating fine. You could be like having a nice robe and the ring put on your finger, but you're out here, dealing with what the leftover of the pigs. And, I've looked at that and that kind of correlation and relationship to my journey many, many times. It took a lot to break me down before I got to that point.
It usually does.
Right.
Us, yeah. We are stubborn. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. So when I got pregnant, I decided I can't do this to another human being. Like I need to get myself together. And when, so I stopped using any kind of drugs or alcohol, and, I was working, I was renting a room by that point, cause I'd started working.
Okay.
And, decided, this is what I'm going to do. Well, then my dad died suddenly. And when he died, I thought all the other pain was bad. And I'll tell you, I was a daddy's girl. And as much as I, feel like I hurt him so much when I left, like I loved him deep down. He had never hurt me, harmed me. He was a very affectionate, loving father. And, I, just rocked my whole world when he died. And we didn't see it coming. Not that that makes it easier, but we didn't see it coming. And so he was gone and I was left pregnant.
And you are 19?
I was 19.
19 at this point.
19, 3 months pregnant.
Wow.
And
that's young to me. That's a lot to be dealing with at 19.
All that baggage. Still had all that baggage. Never got rid of a bit of it, carrying all of it around. So but I decided like, okay, I'm going to have this baby. I'm going to get myself together. Like I need to do this for her. And I had a beautiful baby girl. Her name is Michaela and she's 26 now. She is married, has my first grandchild, which is amazing.
Yeah.
But I had her and I got married to her biological father like a month after she was born and immediately regretted it. It was something I already knew that was not the good fit. Yeah. A lot of people saying, well, if you're going to have a baby, you need to get married, with the church. Like, you can't come back to church. It was that kind of a deal. Like you need to get married. Yeah. And I wish that I would have said, no, this isn't right. Because before our first anniversary came along, we already had the divorce finalized. There was abuse that began on both sides, physical, mental. And I was concerned about that happening with my daughter. Sure. So that was a good decision to make. And so that divorce was over. And then I was on my own. I was a single mom. I decided to, live with my mom that raised me. Okay. And she's really the only person I've ever called mom because she's only been the only person that's been in that actual role where she's mothered me in life. And she was grieving the loss of her husband. And so we were there for each other. And the baby, brought us a lot of joy. And so I kept thinking, okay, I've got this baby. Like I can be happy now. It's like, I'm just going to get married. I'm going to be happy. I'm going to like go to school, get a career. All these things will make me happy. And so I start trying to acquire all those things. And the problem is I would get them and I would feel the same. And I had a void in there and I wasn't happy. Yeah. And so I end up getting married to just the love of my life. He has been my knight in shining armor. He adopted my oldest daughter and has been a father to her. He's amazing. He's my biggest supporter. And God has really blessed me way more than I deserve.
You guys just had an anniversary, right?
We did.
See it on Facebook?
A couple days ago. Yes, we did. 23 years that we've been married.
That's awesome.
So,
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's been a battle some of the time, but
marriage is work. It doesn't matter how much in love you are, how compatible you are. It is work. No matter how you dice it.
Yeah. And I know we go into it a lot of times and we're thinking, oh, we're so in love. We're never going to fight. Yeah. Yeah. That's so silly. But then we find out what true, marriage is. But but anyway, so, I kept thinking, okay, I have the husband, I have the daughter, we were trying to get pregnant and have another child, had infertility issues. And so going through that struggle and had a couple of miscarriages, those were kind of devastating for me. And got a nice house. I ended up driving a nice car. And I kept in my mind, I remember thinking like, okay, I'm a wife. Like I have a mom. Yeah. I have all these things like,
off the list.
Why am I not happy? Like in my mind, I can't figure out why I'm not happy. Right. And it doesn't nothing occurs to me that, you've got all this baggage, you've never dealt with any of it. And so I'm just moving on, trying to find the next thing, just that next thing that's going to make me feel better, because that's what I'm searching for, like my whole life.
Exactly.
So, we end up having a baby, and then we have a baby again, and we have a baby again.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Okay.
Well, we had, when my youngest was born, I had a 1.5 and a 2.5-year-old. So 3 under 3.
Wow.
It was insane.
Yeah.
So I have 3 daughters and a son.
Okay.
My 3 are still at home, 3 teenagers in high school.
Mm-hmm.
But I was still just that void, that huge void.
Yeah.
And I'm at home. My husband's traveling for work all the time. He leaves on Monday. I'm at home trying to handle everything. I end up with some health issues. My back is hurting, got all these problems. Go to the doctor, get some pain pills.
Oh,
and so for me, and we're off to the races. Yep. And, I had definitely used a lot of different drugs, never really had any type of an addiction, I'd say, where I was dependent on anything. Except for maybe smoking marijuana. Like that was probably the most frequent thing I did, but this was different. And this, not only did it numb the physical pain I was having, it numbed that deep emotional pain that was there.
Right.
It gave me energy. I mean, it became the love of my life, like literally the love of my life.
Yeah.
And over a period of a couple of years, I turned from one person into a totally different person. I was doing things I would never have done. I wasn't there for my kids like I should have been. Spending lots of money, then eventually stealing money, from our checking account, knowing that I couldn't take it for that, but taking money that was meant for, our family. And, my mother passed away that had raised me in that period of time. It was 2008, and she had a back surgery. And I'll tell you, one of the lowest points in my life was I was sitting there with her. She had a lot of complications after the surgery, and she ended up back at home at her house on hospice. And I was sitting there with her, and I'd give her a dose of her morphine, and I'd take a dose of her morphine, just crying and crying and sobbing my eyes out, like, I just lose everything. Everything I love, I lose. Yeah. What is there? Like, I have all this around me, but it feels superficial, and I could not enjoy any of it. Like, I just did not know how to be happy. And the word joy had no meaning to me whatsoever. Peace, no meaning whatsoever to me. And so a couple years, of this, it's gradually building, getting worse, to the point where I end up getting charges for selling my prescription medication. That got my attention. Yeah. Told you earlier, I don't really like to be on the wrong side of the law. And it really got me to stop and pause and think, like, what are you doing? Yeah. Like, what in the world? How in the world did I get here? And I ended up with 4 felony charges out of this. And, decided, well, maybe I should get some help, but kind of paused for some months, kind of trying to see what the court was going to do. They definitely proceeded with charges. And at that point, I decided, like, I've got to do something. And my husband then told me he saw an attorney and he was getting a divorce.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, how is your husband dealing with all this in the meantime? And he obviously had enough. Yeah.
He didn't know what to do. He tried to support me. He tried to help me every way he knew. But at the end of the day, like, I never have blamed him. Like, he had to do what he had to do to protect the kids and the family. And I know he was heartbroken over all of it. And he did what he had to do because of them. So he made that step, and he talked to them and started some paperwork. And, I was going to Florida every month at that point to get pain pills there. And it was just, I was so deep in. And I went down there in December of 2010. It was the last time I went to do this. And when I got there, I didn't have any money left. Before I had always, like, stayed in nice places, had a rental car that was nice, lived it up for the few days. It's really this masquerade, to be totally honest with you, like putting a mask on that, look at me, my life is all good. I'm going on these monthly trips to Florida, when really everything was just in shambles. Yeah. And I couldn't hide that anymore. I wore masks and I hid it for a long time. And at this point, I couldn't hide it anymore. So I got down there, and I didn't even have enough money to, like, fill the prescription after I went to the doctor. So I was walking from this nasty hotel down to a Western Union site, Probably hadn't showered, looking rough, walking down this busy street, 5 lanes. And I just stopped and I just stood there. And I remember just looking around like, did anybody see me right now? Like, am I invisible?
Mm-hmm.
And if I died right now, like, would anybody even know? And
Yeah.
that's truly how I felt. And I just thought, like, how did I get to this low of a place where I just have no hope whatsoever?
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know where to go from here.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the place, you know, hitting that bottom where I was like empty of myself finally,
Mm-hmm.
where I realized my need, you know,
Mm-hmm.
for God. And so I remember standing there. I mean, cars whizzing by everywhere. And I put my hands up in the air. And like, I don't know if you're there, but if you're there, I'm going to need some help.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and that was like the start of,
Wow.
you know, the progression of me getting well.
Mm-hmm.
So I came back, and I'd love to say that I got rid of the pills, didn't use them, but that's just not how things went. I did use the rest of them, and it was Christmas Day was the last day of 2010 that I used, and my kids opened all their presents. I have no clue what they opened. I don't have any memories of that. It was not with it. And, you know, I'm not proud to say that. It's where I was at, you know, and my husband took the kids and went to his family for Christmas. They spent the night, and then I was there alone. And I had just decided, like, okay, this is it. Like, this is my plan. I just took the last of what I have. I'm not leaving this house.
Mm-hmm.
If I leave this house, I will go get more.
Mm-hmm.
And I just can't do this. The problem is that I underestimated, like, the power of what withdrawals can do to a person.
Yeah.
So it was bad. It was really bad. And I ended up getting sent to a hospital in an ambulance, and then was in a, you know, kind of an ICU type situation.
Wow.
Incoherent. You know, my husband at that point, again, he's already trying to get me out of the house and has already filed paperwork. Yet there he was sitting beside me in the hospital bed because he knew at that point I didn't have anybody.
Yeah.
I had them. I had my husband. I had my kids. I had no one. I mean, I had my husband's family, but like, I just had no one like left in my family. And, you know, I felt orphaned. I always had this kind of orphan spirit of feeling like I didn't belong in my family, especially after I found out that my mom wasn't my mom. And then the biological mother thing was not what I wanted it to be. And she never really got well again before she passed. And so just this orphan spirit about me. So anyways, it was, you know, it was that low place in that hospital bed. Like, I ended up having a series of, I don't know what you want to call them, because the truth of the matter is they could have been psychosis. They could have been a dream. They could have been a vision. It doesn't really matter what it was, but God used it. Yeah. And he used it for me because I'm a visual person and I needed to see something. And he spoke to me in that dream. And I don't share this all the time, but I'm feeling like I'm going to go ahead and share it.
Yeah.
I struggle sometimes. I'm just being real with you, because sometimes it's these types of things they open you up to, like, well, what if somebody doesn't believe you or whatever?
Right.
But at the end of the day, this is what God did, and it's God's story. And so, I think for me, I end up like in these dreams. It feels like it goes on forever and ever. I have no idea how long it actually went on. And I'm being chased, and everywhere I turn, like, there is someone coming out of somewhere trying to get me and pull me down. And then I end up in this like wilderness type of an environment and just running to exhaustion, have nothing left. And I would finally like sneak away, get away, and feel like I had the person off of my heels, and then another one would be there. And I finally got to the point where I just literally had nothing left. And I got down, crouched down, put my, hands up over my head, and was just like, I'm just going to take it. Just going to lay down and take it. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And right at that time, there was a ruckus. There was like noise that started happening around me. And I finally got brave enough to like peek and see what was happening. And I look up to see a man who's fighting them off. And just one by one, there they go. Wow. And eventually it's just him and I sitting there. And I'm just distraught. Like, why did you do that? You're hurt. You're like bleeding. Like, why would you just do that? And I just remember in my mind thinking, like, blown away. Why would you do that for me? I cannot understand. Yeah. And all he said was, because I love you. and I want you to go feed my sheep.
I love
And those
that.
were the words, because
Yeah.
I love you. I want you to go feed my sheep.
Mm-hmm.
All I can tell you is he was wearing blue jeans and a white t-shirt.
Really?
Don't know. Don't remember a face.
So Jesus wears jeans.
I mean, he did for me.
I like it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he's
That's
casual.
awesome.
I mean, he ditched the toga. Like, no more Birkenstocks and togas, okay?
Right.
But
Yeah. He's present day
Yeah.
styling. Yeah. That's,
yeah.
I love, that is amazing. Like, I'm just sitting here, like imagining all of this stuff that you've gone through. I mean, you've been to hell and back. There's like no way around it,
Yeah.
And it's so amazing because the more of these podcasts that I do, like, we see people every day. Like if I saw you in the coffee shop, I would never imagine that you have this story. Like, and that is one of the things that is really at the central theme of Tattoos of My Soul, is like everybody's got a story of pain. Like everybody's got some kind of trauma, and I think it is amazing how God has literally just used everything that you've been through, and now you are helping people that are in very similar situations, no doubt. And even if it's not a situation that's exactly what you went through, you can still relate because you know what it's like to suffer. You know what it's like to be in the pit. And I think too, just the whole addiction piece. I did another podcast, with Kelly Savage, and she kind of had a similar, like high school parent experience where she was just doing a lot of things to fill in the void. And I think that's something I want to speak to, because like kids, at least from what I'm observing, kids don't do that kind of stuff unless they are trying to fill a void or if there's some kind of hurt going on, And so I guess that's just an awareness that we all need to have as we're, raising up our own kids and just, kids in general, that next generation. If you see kids acting out, ask them, like, is there something going on? Is there a hurt, because it seems to me like that is kind of a central theme, kids typically don't just do that stuff for no reason. Your story, is just amazing to me. I think you could definitely write a book if you wanted to.
I'm in the middle of it.
Are you? Okay.
I am.
Yeah, you and me
writer.
both. Yeah.
I believe that.
I love the visualization piece because I'm a huge visualization. In fact, one of the things I'm doing right now is I'm coming out with a guided journal.
Yes, I'm excited for that.
Thank you. Yes. So one of my key components in my healing has been the visualization piece, and just visualizing what you want your life to look like, not where you're necessarily at right now. Because I know for me, like when I was really going through my trauma and just really, I had a similar experience where I just found myself flat on the floor, just, like you get to that point where it's like, I have nothing left, God. Like you're going to have to come in, you're going to have to step in and fix this because I can't fix it myself. But that visualization piece, and I always kind of compare it to the imagination that we have when we're kids, when we play, like you said, you could just picture yourself as a kid and you're running around and you're imagining, whatever you're doing, and you get totally lost in that moment. And I think if we can use that visualization as part of our healing and part of working through that trauma that we've been through, no matter what that trauma is, like this is where my life's at right now, but this is what I visualize myself for the future, where I want to be. I think that's so key.
And there's hope. That's hope.
Exactly.
Visualizing the future means that I'm having hope that it can.
Exactly.
That there's even a minute,
right.
way. And it's, I'm sitting here thinking about like the baby birds. I was running around and I was trying to save them and rescue them. And in a sense, I feel like that's what I'm doing today is, they're not baby birds, but they have broken wings, or, they've been in bondage and enslaved and need set free. And I always said when I was a kid, I wanted to be a nurse, and I always had that desire to want to help people and to help with healing and do all of that. And it didn't come in that sense with nurse, but I feel like what I do is nursing people's souls, just to sit down with somebody and just be real about, where I've been, where they're at, and let them know that it's okay that you're struggling. Like, I think we just don't validate, like, it's okay that you're feeling the way you're feeling.
Yeah.
And just to say, like, we run around and we have to put those masks on.
Yep.
And just like that coffee shop thing you said, like,
Mhm.
yeah, I intentionally put the mask on so that if I went into the coffee shop and saw you,
Yeah.
that you would think everything was okay
Yeah,
with me.
she's got it together,
Mm.
you know, and I think the social
Yeah.
media is good, but it's like it plays into that. I mean, I say it's good. Is it good? I don't know.
It can be used for
It can be
good,
used
but-
for good. I'm trying to use it for good. I know you
Yeah.
do too, but it's like that can really play into that whole comparison
Mhm.
thing. I heard something on the radio the other day where they said that there was a certain percentage, it was very high. It was like 60%, 70% people that constantly are comparing themselves
Yeah.
to each other. It actually can cause depression.
Mhm.
And I think that
believe
when
that.
we are walking around with the masks, like you were just saying,
Yeah.
trying to act like we have it all together, instead of just being open and raw, and like, hey, I'm struggling here. You know,
Yeah.
there's some freedom
Yeah.
in saying, I'm going through something. Like, I don't
Yeah.
have it all together.
It's okay to not be okay. I mean,
It
I say
is,
that
yes.
to women I work with all the time. Like, it's okay. Like, I would
Yeah.
say, are you okay? And they're not sure. I'm like, it's okay to not be okay. Because if you're not, just say where you're at right now, because we don't know
Exactly.
where to start. We don't even know how to move forward if we can't
Right.
figure out where we're at. We have to put our
Exactly.
finger on it. And, and I learned that by doing that,
Mhm.
over the past it's been 10 and a half years I've been in recovery. And over that time period, that's been an ongoing process, a journey with the Lord where he's
Mhm.
been remaking me, plucking out the old,
Yeah.
and just, teaching me just in God's word, and just like absorbing it like a sponge and soaking it up, because,
Mhm.
I love the verses about he comforts us in our affliction so that
Mhm.
we can go then and we can comfort others in theirs. Just like you
Right.
said, we know because we've been there.
Yeah.
And, I don't think God wanted me to have to go through all those things. I don't think it was his will for us to be injured the way that we've been injured.
Mhm.
It's a result of sin in a world
broken
that's
world.
broken and
Yep.
fallen.
Yep.
But he uses all of it. I'm 100% positive that he
Yeah.
uses it for our good if we turn to him
I
and we
agree.
surrender it to him. And I mean, I walk in purpose each day.
Mhm.
I still have days where I struggle,
Sure.
I'm
Yeah.
an ongoing process. And
As do I.
you
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
and I have days where I still struggle because insecurity is a big thing, that orphan thing,
Yeah.
and I think I told you on the phone about a newer thing this past year that came up that has been a hard struggle for
Yeah.
me, and share that a little bit too, just because it's kind of ties in with just trusting God,
Mhm.
because it's not like, okay, we hit that rock bottom and we got up, we invited the Lord into it and surrendered, and then everything's fine.
Mm-mm.
That does not happen. I wish, but it doesn't.
Yeah. It usually
know?
gets harder, actually. At least is
Yeah.
what I've found.
But we have the tools now. But we
we
have
do.
an
We do.
arsenal of weapons. If we just pick
Correct.
the Bible up, and if we use it, we put our armor on, and
Mhm.
all those pieces of the armor, they all have a purpose. And so at least now we're not fighting the battle on our own. We're like fighting with God,
Right.
with him. And he's really fighting the battle.
Mhm.
Actually, we shouldn't even be fighting it. We should just be, standing firm in our faith and
Yeah.
trusting and praying and asking others to invite us into it. But that's easier said than done, right?
It is. It is. And I
It
think
is.
too, like, there's something to be said for having confidence in yourself as a person, because I think we get in the habit. I know women struggle with this in particular, of constantly being in this mindset of self-doubt, and that's why one of my t-shirts that I made has
Mhm.
confidence on it, because I feel like confidence is so needed. And when I say confidence, I'm not talking about like confidence in how you look or how you come across. I'm talking about confidence in like who you are as a human being
Mhm.
and what you're capable of. And I always tell
Yeah.
people, like, you have the answers. It's in your
Mhm.
inner wisdom
Right.
through the Holy Spirit, through God, and through your own just inner wisdom.
Yeah.
It's a matter of getting quiet and being able to listen, because if you're going
Mhm.
100 miles a minute and you're doing everything to put that mask
Yeah.
on and to make sure it looks great on the outside, you're going to miss the messages. You know, you've got to get quiet
Right.
within yourself. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And so this year, about this time last year, I woke up one Saturday morning, and usually I kind of just wake up, pick my cell phone up like a lot of us do, put my glasses on my face so I could see. And, I look at the cell phone and I read this message. It's from my biological mother's brother.
Okay.
And it says, "It seems you have a brother you didn't know about." That's what the message
Surprise.
says. Yeah, and I remember I just went, huh.
Okay.
And my husband was laying right there, and he had just woken up, and he's like, "What?" And I just said, like, all casually, like, "It seems I have a brother I didn't know about." And so it was the weirdest, like, just reading it like that, like, just almost removed from the emotion of it. I was just like, "Oh, okay." Almost like nothing surprises me anymore.
Yeah.
And, I end up by the end of that day talking to a guy who is my brother.
Okay.
And so, end up talking to him at length. And our journeys have actually kind of, been very similar in life. Have some of the same struggles, been through a lot of trauma, and have made it through significant things. And so I talked to him, and over the next months, I'm building a relationship with him, finding out all these things I never knew about my biological mother, about aunts and uncles and people that are still alive that I didn't know, like, knew me or loved me. And then, finding out my brother, he found out who his biological father was. And over time he starts saying, "Hey, have you ever thought about doing the DNA test? Because there's some people who think your dad's not your dad." And I'm like, no, my dad's my dad. I have his eyes. Like, I have his shoulders. Like, no, my dad's my dad. But, I don't know what they're talking about, whatever. And so I start talking to more people, and I'm talking to aunts that I just never had connections with. And it comes to light that, like, everybody knew that my dad that raised me, like, could not have children.
Wow.
And I mean, all these people knew this, and except for me.
So that didn't happen just once, but twice, where you found out, like, your mom is not your mom and your dad is not your dad. Like,
now dad's not my dad.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing a DNA test, and it came back that, the dad that raised me, that was on my birth certificate, that I always believed was my father, was not my biological father.
Wow.
I got the confirmation of that beginning of this year.
Okay.
And so that means that my brother Brian is my full brother. So not half brothers as we first thought. And then I found out I have two siblings that are in Florida. I've gone to meet them since. But out of that, there's been some confusion. There's been some, like, what? Like, what do you do with that?
Yeah.
Like, how is that possible? And I thought my eyes and my, my broad shoulders came from there, and apparently not. Right. And, but it's really brought, like, just a lot of connections to other family members and people. Like, it's been so healing. And I think that's the difference I want to share, is that in the past, when I had hard things, like, I didn't have skills. Like, I didn't have coping skills. I didn't have a relationship with the Lord. And I didn't know what to do with those things. I didn't take them to him and let him, like, guide me through it. Yeah. And I still had a lot of, like, all over the place emotions with this situation. It wasn't easy. It's a hard thing to try to, like, grasp.
Yeah.
But the difference this time is that, I did it, like, inviting God into it, and, like, letting him use it to teach me through and to grow me through. Yep. And that it's just a night and day difference than how I handled things, in years past. So, we go through hard things, and I firmly believe that, like, God just intends to use every drop, every single bit of the struggle for good in our lives, because I just don't think he's a God that's going to waste the pain.
Amen.
I just don't believe that.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I am personally, my goal is just to, like, okay, whenever I'm in a bad situation, what can I learn from this, God? How can I grow from this? Because I just don't want to have to keep learning the same lesson over and over again, and having more painful situations and surrendering to his way. It's just so much easier. It's not easy, it's not simple, but it's not rocket science either. And it's kind of like, oh, well, if he is the all-powerful, all-knowing God, and he's, been here from the beginning of time, before time started, and he, knows past, present, and future, then I guess maybe I can trust him, with my life. And so that's just what I try to do on a daily basis. And, sometimes we do better at that, and sometimes we don't. But,
right. Yeah. You're preaching. Go ahead. Keep going.
I do. Get me on a roll. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, I'm like 100% with you. I literally just wrote about that this morning, where when we go through hard times, what can we learn? We are literally given opportunity after opportunity to learn. And like you said, if we don't learn this time, we're just going to have to learn it a different way, probably a harder way. So I think, that's such a good piece of advice. With that, I feel like I could sit here and talk to you all day long. I think, you probably need to come back and do another podcast with me. But I really appreciate you being like so just open and vulnerable. I know for sure that a lot of people that, listen to this, you hit on so many topics that there's going to be so many people that can relate to at least part of your story. Yeah. So I think the underlying theme here that we're both saying is when you go through something difficult, stop and ask yourself, what can you learn, and trust that God's going to do something good from it.
Yeah. And remember that quote that I started with.
Yes. Can you say that one more time?
Consider how precious a soul must be when both God and the devil are after it.
Yes. I love that. I'm going to look that. Who did you say that was?
Charles Spurgeon.
I'm going to look that up. Yeah. So, all right. Well, Angie, thank you so much. And I really just appreciate you coming in and being a guest.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
All right.